Alright, yesterday you guys you started some volume notes, and even some of you even got to surface area. We're going to backtrack to the half sheet of volume notes that you already had glued in your notebook. We're going to go over a couple things. We're going to do some couple examples together, and then we are going to learn the information to take volume one step further and apply the volume into word problems. So I'm going to give you the keywords so that when you're given a word problem, you can analyze it and determine, do you need to find the volume, the area, or the perimeter of the shape that they are talking about in there. So we're just going to go over some basics real quick. For volume, as a sixth grader, you only are finding the volume of a rectangular prism. And so we're going to know the definition of a rectangular prism. A rectangular prism is just a 3D figure where all these sides are going to be rectangles, and all rectangular prisms have 6 faces. And faces, you'll see the word faces more often, but really faces is just a fancy word for sides. So if I say, how many faces does a rectangular prism have, your answer is 6. Or if I say, how many sides does a rectangular prism have, your answer is still 6. The definition of volume is as follows. Volume is the amount of space an object occupies, or how much of something fits into an object. When you are solving volume, you're going to use a formula. You do not have to memorize this formula because you will have a formula sheet and it will tell you the formula on there in case you forget. I'm going to give it to you and you're just going to write it down. That way you have it in several places. So volume equals length times width times height, which is how you'll see V equals LWH. There's no operation in there because you remember how when we did like equations, we had like 2x or 4x or whatever. There was no operation. It meant multiplication. Same thing here. There's no operation in between here. It just means that you're going to do multiplication instead of any other option. So in case you forget what that means, it means length times width times height. Volume is probably one of the easiest, like straight up mathematical operations that you'll do in this unit, because typically when you're going to be given a rectangular prism, it's going to give you 3 numbers, and the only thing that you need to know is that you have to multiply all 3 of those numbers together. So in order to find the volume, 1, you would write down your formula, and then you would plug in the numbers and solve it. So we're going to go through 2 examples together. And in order to do this first, we're going to draw a rectangular prism. You draw 2 boxes like this, and then you can connect them with kind of diagonally-ish lines, and then it looks like a rectangular prism. And so this side here is going to be 4 inches. This one here is going to be 6. And then this one here is going to be 10. Now we're ready to solve this problem. And in order for us to do that, we are first going to write down our formula. So volume equals length. You will most often see the L look like a cursive L, so that you're not getting it confused with a 1. our volume is length times width times height. So I'm going to plug in those numbers. Really, in this case, because it's multiplication, and whether I multiply width times length times height, or height times length times width, or height times width times length, or length times width times height, is multiplication. So I'm going to get the same answer anyway, but just kind of so that you can kind of understand a little better. I have here my length, so I'm going to write down 10. Times, then I'm going with my width, which would be here, which is 4. And then lastly, I have my height, which is here, which is 6 inches. So I can use a calculator. I can do 10 times 4 times 6. And when I do that, I'm going to get B for volume equals 240. Can't forget my units, inches. And it's going to be inches cubed. So, or my volume here is 240 cubic inches, or 240 inches cubed. This is the proper way to write it, unless you want to write it all the way out, cubic inches. This is going to be the shortest way to do it, therefore probably the easiest. Alright, we're going to do another example together. So I'm going to draw another rectangular prism. Alright, we'll have 3 inches up here. Four inches here, and then 5 inches here. So again, I'm going to write down my formula. Volume equals length times width times height. Step 2, plug in and solve. So length is here, 5 inches, times my width, which is here, 3 inches, times my height, which is here, is 4 inches. Now I'm just going to use my calculator and I can multiply those across. And when I do that, I'm going to get my volume equals 60 inches cubed, or 60 cubic inches. The hardest part, one of the hardest things about this one is just remembering that your units are always going to be cubed. Units in this unit are very, very important, and squaring them, cubing them, or leaving them just regular is going to be very important and very necessary within this unit. Alright, so let's go in and let's look at some key words that when you read them in a word problem would tell you that you need to find the volume. Some of those are going to be fill, boxes, anything that is dealing with water is going to mean that you're finding the volume. So, oh, Roger wants to take a bath, and his bathtub is 12 feet by 1 foot by, I don't know, 6 feet. How much water can fit in the bathtub? You would just multiply those all together and do that. So dealing with water, this one is how many can fit. So if it's trying to figure out how many things can fit in a box, or how many things can fit in a jar, or how many, well, it wouldn't be a jar because it needs to be a rectangle, but anything like that is gonna, you're taking up space. So how much space something occupies, how much of something is going to fit in this object, or how much space does it have to hold something. And then this last one is, as I was saying earlier, is it's all going to be cubed. So if it says how many cubic units, so how many cubic feet, how many cubic inches, how many cubic centimeters, anything like that. If you see the word cubic, you're going to need to know that you need to find the volume of the shape that they are identifying. Alright, we are now going to move on to surface area, so make sure that you filled in all of this information and are ready to move on to your surface area half sheet.